I never imagined that refusing a single favor would turn my own family into my worst enemies. But the moment I said no, everything I had worked for, my reputation, my marriage, my peace, was suddenly under attack. I'm a surgeon. I've spent years grinding through medical school, sleepless residency nights, and endless hospital shifts to build a career I could be proud of. My wife Jessica has always been my biggest supporter. But her family, especially her younger brother Mike, has always been complicated. It started with a phone call from my mother-in-law Linda. She didn't waste time on small talk. She told me Mike needed surgery and calmly added, "Of course you'll be doing it." I asked her what hospital he'd be referred to. There was a pause. "No," she said, slightly irritated. "I mean you will do it. For free. We're family." I took a deep breath before answering. I told her I wasn't comfortable performing surgery on a close family member, especially given the history between Mike and me. I also made it clear that my hospital had strict ethical guidelines. Her tone changed instantly. She demanded to know why I wouldn't help my own brother-in-law. And for once, I didn't sugarcoat it. I told her the truth. I didn't trust Mike, and I refused to put my career on the line for someone who had spent years mocking my profession and questioning my integrity. Mike had publicly belittled doctors during the pandemic. He laughed at vaccines. He told relatives I must have cheated my way through medical school. And every time I confronted him, I was told, "He's just joking." But jokes like that don't just hurt feelings. They destroy careers. Linda dismissed all of it. She told me I was being dramatic, that Mike didn't mean it, and that family helped family. No questions asked. When I hung up, Jessica looked at me with tears in her eyes. She begged me to reconsider. She said Mike was scared, that Linda was stressed, and that maybe I could just be the bigger person. She reminded me how important family was to her and how much pressure she was under. I told her I understood, but my answer was still no. That's when I saw the familiar pattern return. Mike had always known how to get what he wanted from Jessica. Years earlier, when we were planning our wedding, he'd pulled the same stunt. We had everything carefully budgeted, every detail planned, until Mike decided we had to hire his friend's band. The band was expensive, mediocre, and completely not our style. When Jessica said no, Mike started guilt-tripping her. He reminded her of the money he'd lent her years ago. He said their mom would be heartbroken if Mike wasn't more involved. And then came the final blow. He said that I was a successful doctor, so money shouldn't even matter. Eventually Jessica caved. The band performed at our wedding. They were fine. Nothing special. But Mike walked around that night like he'd won a trophy. And now, years later, I was seeing the same manipulation play out again. Only this time the stakes were much higher. When I stood my ground, the mood shifted fast. Linda stopped calling politely. Mike started texting passive-aggressive messages. And then, almost overnight, things turned hostile. I didn't know it yet, but my refusal had triggered something far darker than family drama. Because this wasn't just about surgery. This was about control. And Mike was about to prove just how far he was willing to go to punish me for saying no. I thought refusing to perform one surgery was the end of it. But I had no idea that Mike was already setting a plan in motion that would nearly destroy my career forever. At first, I tried to convince myself that refusing the surgery would eventually blow over. Families argue. Emotions cool. People move on, or so I hoped. For a while things were quiet. No calls. No texts. No surprise visits. But silence, I learned, can be more dangerous than noise. Around that time, my career was finally reaching a turning point. I had been shortlisted for a partnership at a highly respected private clinic. It was the kind of opportunity doctors spend their entire lives chasing. The kind that validates every sacrifice, every sleepless night. I hadn't told many people yet, but during a family dinner at Linda's house, I decided to share the news. I was nervous but hopeful. Maybe this would be the moment Mike finally took me seriously. As I explained the opportunity, the room filled with congratulations. Linda smiled proudly. Jessica squeezed my hand. For a brief moment everything felt Normal. Then I noticed Mike. He wasn't smiling. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, wearing that familiar smirk, the one that always made my stomach tighten. "So," he said casually, "you're not worried someone else might take it from you?" I laughed awkwardly and said competition was always part of the process, but from the clinic's feedback, things were looking promising. Jessica nudged him, telling him to be supportive. Mike raised his eyebrows. "I'm just saying," he replied. "As long as you don't have any skeletons in your closet, you should be fine." The table went quiet. I asked him what he meant. He shrugged. "Nothing. Just making conversation." I told myself he was bluffing. Mike loved stirring discomfort. That's who he was. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Weeks later, just days before my final evaluation with the clinic's board, everything collapsed. I woke up to an anonymous email. No greeting. No signature. Just attachments. Screenshots of online forum posts. Anonymous emails. Comments accusing me of negligence, unethical behavior, even malpractice. They were vague, but serious enough to raise red flags. My heart pounded as I scrolled. None of it was true. But truth doesn't matter when doubt spreads faster. By noon I could feel the shift at work. Colleagues who used to joke with me avoided eye contact. Conversations stopped when I entered rooms. Administration requested clarifications. The board postponed my evaluation. I was blindsided. I hired a private investigator out of pure desperation. I needed answers. I needed proof. What they found made my blood run cold. Every post, every email, every anonymous claim had been traced back to burner accounts linked directly to Mike. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning I drove straight to his house. I confronted him on his porch, holding the evidence in my hands. I demanded to know why he would do something so vicious. He didn't deny it. Instead, he laughed. He told me I always thought I was better than him. That I flaunted my fancy doctor life. That I needed to be knocked down a few pegs. "I just leveled the playing field," he said. When Jessica found out, she was devastated. She confronted him immediately and cut off contact for a while. But the damage had already been done. Even after clearing my name, the clinic withdrew the partnership offer. They said the accusations, regardless of their origin, posed a reputational risk. Years of work vanished with one email. I rebuilt slowly, painfully. And just when my career began to recover, Mike came back, like he always did, this time demanding surgery. And when I refused again, I realized something terrifying. Mike hadn't changed. He had just been waiting. I thought Mike had already done the worst he could, but what he did next inside my own hospital would nearly destroy me in front of my patients. I had learned to live with the scars Mike left behind. Losing the partnership was devastating, but over time I rebuilt my confidence and my standing. Patients trusted me again. Colleagues respected my work. Life wasn't perfect, but it was stable. That stability shattered the day Mike walked into my hospital. It was a busy morning. I was halfway through my rounds when I saw him standing near the reception desk, leaning casually against the counter like he owned the place. My stomach dropped. He didn't have an appointment. He didn't belong there. And judging by the way he was talking loudly, I knew he wasn't there for peace. As I approached, I overheard him speaking to another patient in the waiting area. "I asked my own brother-in-law to help me," Mike said, raising his voice. "And he refused. Said he didn't want to be responsible if something went wrong." The patient looked uncomfortable. Others nearby started listening. Mike saw me and smiled. "I guess he's scared," Mike continued. "Some doctors can't handle complicated cases." Every eye turned toward me. I forced a calm smile and reassured the patients that everything was fine, encouraging them not to worry about private family matters. That only fueled him. "Oh, I'm not done," he said. "People deserve to know who they're trusting with their lives." His voice echoed through the waiting room. He accused me of being reckless, of hiding behind rules, of refusing treatment because of personal grudges. Each sentence landed like a punch. Whispers spread. My hands shook, but I stayed professional. I asked him to leave. He ignored me. I stepped away briefly to check on a patient, hoping security would intervene. When I returned, the situation had somehow gotten worse. Mike had found the hospital administrator. He spoke with practiced concern, pretending to advocate for patient safety. He framed himself as a worried family member. He asked why someone who refused to help his own blood should be trusted by strangers. I felt like I was reliving the moment my career collapsed years earlier. Finally snapped. I told Mike to leave immediately or I would call the police. He scoffed, but he left. Not before delivering one final remark about how patients deserved better. The next morning my heart sank. I checked the hospital's online reviews. Dozens of new one-star ratings had appeared overnight. Anonymous. Coordinated. One claimed I refused to treat family and would do the same to patients. Another warned readers to stay away from a doctor who lets personal grudges interfere with care. I knew exactly who was behind it. Later that evening, as I walked to my car, I saw Mike waiting near the parking lot. That was it. I told him this had gone too far. That he was harassing me. That he was risking my livelihood. He crossed his arms and shrugged. "This all could have been avoided," he said. "You did this to yourself." I realized then that reasoning with him was impossible. Over the next weeks, the attacks escalated. Social media posts, rumors, messages questioning my competence. Patients started asking uncomfortable questions. My colleagues grew anxious, not because they doubted me, but because controversy attracts attention, and hospitals hate attention. The stress crept into every corner of my life. Sleep became impossible. Jessica tried to comfort me, but I could tell she was torn. Her family still whispered in her ear. Guilt weighed on her shoulders. Finally, after one exhausting night, I sat her down. I told her I couldn't do this anymore. I told her that Linda and Mike were destroying my life, and that for my sanity, they had to be cut off completely. Her face went pale. She said she couldn't choose between me and her family. And in that moment I realized something heartbreaking. Mike wasn't just attacking my career. He was coming for my marriage too. I thought forcing a decision would bring clarity, but the choice Jessica made next would change everything between us forever. The room was silent after I told Jessica I couldn't live like this anymore. She sat on the edge of the couch, staring at the floor, her hands clenched together. I could see the war raging inside her. Loyalty to the family she grew up with versus the life we had built together. She asked me how I could expect her to just walk away from her mother and brother. I told her I wasn't asking for revenge. I wasn't asking her to hate them. I was asking for protection. Protection for our marriage, our future, and my sanity. I reminded her of everything Mike had done. The lies, the sabotage, the harassment at my workplace. I told her I couldn't smile at family dinners while they were actively trying to destroy me behind my back. Jessica started crying. She said it wasn't fair. That she shouldn't have to choose. That family was family no matter what. I told her love doesn't mean tolerating abuse. That night I gave her time to think. But she didn't need it. The next morning she sat across from me, eyes swollen from crying, and told me she chose me. Relief washed over me, but it didn't last. Because choosing me didn't make Mike stop. It made him angrier. The harassment shifted toward Jessica. Linda and Mike flooded her phone with messages accusing her of betrayal. They called her cold, ungrateful, manipulated. They showed up at her workplace, creating scenes that left her humiliated. Watching the people she loved tear her down broke something inside her. Then came the email. Anonymous. Again. This one contained screenshots of private messages between Mike and another relative. In them, Mike openly discussed ruining my career if I didn't perform the surgery. He mocked the idea of consequences. He said I needed to be put in my place. I felt sick reading it. Jessica was shaking. This wasn't speculation anymore. This was proof. Jessica decided she needed to confront them, once and for all. She arranged a meeting at a quiet cafe. Linda and Mike assumed it was to discuss the surgery. They walked in smug, confident. Then I joined her. I laid the printed screenshots on the table. The air shifted instantly. Mike laughed at first, dismissing it as fake. But when Jessica calmly pointed out timestamps, names, and details only he would know, his confidence cracked. He got defensive. He accused me of poisoning Jessica against her family. He said I was weak, that I never deserved her. And then he said something that finally revealed the truth. He admitted he was afraid of losing her. For years, Jessica had always prioritized Mike. She defended him, covered for him, protected him. Now she wasn't. And he hated that. Linda stayed quiet through most of it. When she finally spoke, it wasn't to stop him. It was to excuse him. That's when Jessica stood up. She told them she was done. She blocked their numbers that same day. Removed them from social media. Cut off all contact. The silence afterward was deafening. Jessica struggled deeply after that. Guilt haunted her. She mourned the family she thought she had. I struggled too. My career was still fragile. My trust was shattered. The stress had taken a serious toll on my mental health. We sought help. Therapy helped me process the trauma of being targeted again. Jessica found support groups that helped her understand she wasn't responsible for her family's choices. Slowly, things began to heal. Then, months later, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived. From Linda. She apologized. She admitted she had enabled Mike for years. She asked for forgiveness. She asked for another chance. Jessica cried as she read it. And we faced another impossible decision. I thought cutting ties was the end. But reopening even one door threatened to undo everything we had fought to protect. The letter sat on our kitchen table for hours. Neither of us touched it. Linda's handwriting was unmistakable. Careful, deliberate, almost fragile. Jessica kept glancing at it like it might explode if she picked it up. When she finally did, her hands were shaking. She read it slowly. Linda admitted she had been wrong. She wrote about how she had spent years defending Mike without questioning his behavior. She apologized for dismissing my pain, for pressuring me, for choosing denial over accountability. She said losing Jessica had forced her to confront uncomfortable truths she had avoided for too long. She asked, carefully, humbly, for a chance to rebuild. When Jessica finished reading, tears streamed down her face. I don't know if she really means it, she said. But she's still my mom. I told her something important that night. Forgiveness doesn't mean access. We talked for hours. We agreed that if Linda truly wanted to make things right, it would happen slowly, with boundaries, and without Mike. Jessica wasn't ready to see her brother. And honestly, neither was I. We decided to meet Linda in a public place. A small cafe across town. Neutral ground. No surprises. When Linda walked in, she looked different. Smaller. Tired. She hugged Jessica and immediately apologized again, this time face to face. She didn't excuse Mike. She didn't defend him. She admitted she had failed both of us. I watched carefully. Apologies are easy. Accountability isn't. We laid out clear boundaries. No pressure. No guilt. No messages passed from Mike. No family emergencies that somehow always involved him. Linda agreed. For the first time I believed her. Mike, on the other hand, showed no remorse. Through mutual acquaintances, we heard that he blamed everyone but himself. He said I had stolen his sister, that I had turned her against her own family. He continued telling anyone who would listen that I was a bad doctor who hid behind rules. But his voice was getting quieter. People started seeing the pattern. Meanwhile, we focused on rebuilding. I poured myself into my work, not to prove anything but to heal. Over time, my colleagues stopped whispering. Patients stopped questioning. New reviews drowned out the fake ones. Slowly, my reputation recovered. Jessica found strength in ways I hadn't seen before. She built a life independent of guilt and obligation. She surrounded herself with people who respected her boundaries. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were growing. One evening, months later, we sat together by the fireplace. No phones. No anxiety. Just silence and warmth. Jessica took my hand and smiled softly. "We did the right thing," she said. And I knew she was right. Not because everything turned out perfectly, but because we chose peace over chaos. Truth over manipulation. Each other over toxicity. Some doors once closed should stay closed. And some should never have been opened in the first place. But just when we thought the storm was finally over, a message appeared. One we never expected, and one that threatened to drag everything back into the light again. The message arrived late at night. An unknown number. Just one sentence. "I know you think this is over." My chest tightened the moment I read it. Jessica saw my expression and didn't need to ask who it was from. She sat beside me, silent but steady. We had come too far to let fear pull us backward. This time we didn't react emotionally. We acted smart. The message was followed by another, longer, angrier. Mike accused me of ruining his life, of turning his own sister against him, of humiliating him in front of the family. He demanded that I fix what I broke by agreeing to the surgery. I didn't respond. Instead, I documented everything. Every message. Every timestamp. Every threat, however subtle. The next day I met with a lawyer. Given Mike's past behavior, the smear campaigns, the harassment at my workplace, and now written proof of intimidation, we had a strong case. The lawyer helped us draft a formal cease and desist letter. It was sent within 48 hours. The response was immediate. Silence. Days passed. Then weeks. No new messages. No surprise appearances. No anonymous posts. For the first time in years, I slept through the night. Linda respected the boundaries we set. Our contact with her remained limited, cautious but calm. She never mentioned Mike. She never pushed. Slowly, trust began to rebuild. Not because we owed it to her, but because she earned it. Work became normal again. No tension. No whispers. Just patience, medicine, and purpose. One afternoon, a senior administrator pulled me aside. He told me he'd followed my work closely during the past year. He said he admired my professionalism under pressure. He asked if I'd consider a leadership role. I smiled for the first time in a long while. Jessica flourished too. She no longer lived in fear of disappointing people who took advantage of her kindness. She laughed more. Slept better. She rediscovered parts of herself that had been buried under years of obligation. One evening, as we sat together reflecting on everything we'd endured, she said something that stayed with me. Love shouldn't feel like a hostage situation. She was right. Family doesn't mean entitlement. Forgiveness doesn't mean surrender. And peace doesn't come from pleasing everyone. It comes from protecting what matters. We built a life rooted in mutual respect, honesty, and boundaries. And it was stronger than anything we'd lost. Years later, we rarely hear Mike's name. And when we do, it no longer carries power. 'Cause we chose peace. And that choice saved everything.